The evening he pressed his lips to mine franked the moment I unraveled it all. The memory of red wine lingers on my lips, the gentle murmur of the refrigerator, the soft, rhythmic drip of the kitchen faucet echoed in the stillness. The house was enveloped in a profound stillness, where silence took on a voice of its own, echoing the weight of unspoken guilt. His eyes linger in my memory, the gaze of Zach, gazing at me as if I were the sole treasure in existence, the one thing worth striving to attain. It was never meant to unfold this way, not in my view, not alongside him. I had reached adulthood. 42. A devoted partner. A woman who assumes the role of a mother to her partner's children. A woman who meticulously organizes her calendars, maintains pristine sheets, and possesses an unwavering memory for birthdays. Yet, on that night, I let go of all that I was meant to be. His lips radiated warmth. His hands trembled with uncertainty, yet they yearned with a fierce desire. And my body, my treacherous vessel, reacted before my mind could scream no. In that fleeting instant, right before everything unfolded, I found myself at a crossroads, tempted to turn back. I beheld the line. I perceived it distinctly, yet I chose to step over it regardless. I can sense your thoughts. I would share that sentiment were I in your position. However, my purpose is not to seek your forgiveness. I simply require you to grasp the essence of a woman such as myself might find herself desiring a boy like him. This tale does not revolve around love. It unfolds gradually, a quiet disintegration. Allow me to share every detail with you. Linda is the name I go by. At the age of 42, I find myself a dedicated housewife, and by all accounts, I possess everything that many deem desirable. A spouse with a respectable career, a generous kitchen adorned with elegant granite countertops. Every Friday, without fail, fresh flowers grace the dining table. Yet, concealed within those seemingly flawless images was a woman silently coming apart at the seams. Frank, my second husband, was a man of clarity and reason. A dozen years have passed, and he stands refined, composed, with a voice perfectly suited for the hallowed halls of justice and the art of negotiation. I chose to marry him not out of fervor, but in pursuit of tranquility. Following the tumult of my first marriage, the notion of stability emerged as a rare and precious luxury, and he bestowed that upon me, a sanctuary, framework, a life governed by rules and routines, yet devoid of warmth. Absence. Frank's affection manifested through meticulously crafted schedules and detailed spreadsheets. His loyalty, fractured by an affair he deemed a mistake, never fully mended. He journeyed frequently, and when he returned home, he was never truly present. At the age of 16, Zach, the son from his first marriage, took up residence in the home. In those days, he embodied sharp angles and an air of silence. He never referred to me as Mom. He seldom met my gaze. Yet, time possesses a remarkable ability to smooth out the sharpness of life's contours. By the age of 22, Zach had transformed into something captivating. Silence lingers, still in a contemplative state, yet his silence had transformed, no longer evoking a sense of distance. Felt like a burden, meaning of like, and those eyes, they tarried far beyond the appointed hour. Next came Mrs. Henderson. The neighbor, peering through binoculars, masked their curiosity behind the facade of gardening. She was more familiar with everyone's schedule than the postman himself. And though she perpetually wore a gentle smile, I sensed her gaze trailing me like an ever-present shadow. At times, I found myself pondering whether she was aware, if she had laid eyes on it before I had. Yet, therein lies the essence of signs. Only in hindsight do they reveal their meaning. At first, the loneliness goes unnoticed. It slips in like a whisper beneath a shut door, almost imperceptible until, without warning, you find yourself shivering. Frank ceased to be a part of my life long before my efforts dwindled. He would take his place opposite me at the dinner table, inquiring about the groceries rather than asking how I was faring. We occupied the same bed, yet remained worlds apart. Even his apologies, after I discovered him texting another woman, seemed scripted, as if he had delivered that speech on multiple occasions. I erred, he confessed, yet errors are unintentional. His actions seemed deliberate, as if they were meant to be. Yet I remained. Starting anew at 42 seemed more daunting than remaining in place, for I was reluctant to acknowledge that I had chosen a path of compromise, one that led to silence and a void. And at some point in the journey, I started to fade away. I ceased to adorn my lips with lipstick, ceased the act of painting, ceased to dream. I transformed into a reflection of myself that felt foreign and unfamiliar, a spectral figure drifting through the tapestry of her existence. And then, Zach appeared. He failed to occupy the emptiness. He cast light upon it. With each sidelong look, each prolonged stare, and every silent pause, he brought to life the truth of my existence. I remained in plain sight, still sought after. To emerge from the shadows after a prolonged absence carries with it a certain peril. It's utterly captivating. Captivating. I reassured myself that it was merely innocent. I found myself quite flattered. Yet, beneath the surface, I yearned for that gaze. For the first time in years, someone regarded me not merely as a wife, not in the manner of a housekeeper, yet in the manner of a woman. In those hushed intervals, when Frank had departed, when the atmosphere hung heavy with stillness, I found myself lost in thought. What if? It unfolded gradually. Not a single instant passed when the world shifted on its axis. There was no abrupt intake of breath, no dramatic moment of clarity. Simply instances, petite in size. Zach began to linger more in the doorways, inquiring whether I required assistance with the groceries, repairing items that seemed perfectly fine, tightening a screw, straightening a misaligned picture frame. He would draw a fraction nearer than what was deemed appropriate. As I reached for something over my shoulder, I felt his breath softly grazing my neck. Our fingers grazed each other with a frequency that seemed too deliberate for mere chance. And with each instance, I sensed it deeply, more than merely the connection. Yet the tension lingers. The present moment. It's akin to that fleeting instant just prior to a tempest, when the atmosphere hangs heavy in an unsettling stillness. He always maintained his boundaries, not at that moment, yet it was his eyes that spoke volumes. Those captivating eyes. They began to observe me closely, not merely a fleeting look, but a moment to savor, as if he were committing to memory something I had not yet understood to be significant. One evening, I noticed him observing me intently as I meticulously folded the laundry, not out of curiosity, serious in tone, yet with fervor. I chuckled, a bit anxious, attempting to keep the atmosphere buoyant. Pardon. Am I wearing a sock on my head? He remained expressionless. He merely shook his head in a slow, deliberate manner and uttered, "You possess a beauty that is undeniable. Do you realize that?" I ought to have dismissed it entirely. I ought to have urged him to cease. In that moment, I found myself paralyzed, for I found myself unable to recall the last occasion when those words had been spoken to me with genuine intent. A flicker ignited in the darkness, a mere flicker, yet it found its resting place upon parched ground, and I sensed, deep within, that if I didn't depart soon, the fire would inevitably arrive. Frank found himself away from home once more. A conference in Dallas, or perhaps Chicago. I found it hardly worth the effort to recall any longer. That night, the house enveloped itself in an unusual stillness, a silence that envelopes you, a weight upon your very being. Zach discovered me in the kitchen, filling a glass with wine. He clutched a deck of cards, his lips curling into that familiar half-smile that never failed to unsettle me. "Care to engage in a game?" he inquired, gesturing toward the table with a nod. For a moment I paused. He then nodded. It began innocently enough. Blackjack, war, whimsical games where the rules were little more than a suggestion. Our laughter echoed endlessly, consumed a bit too swiftly. With every passing round, the distance that separated us diminished. At a certain moment, he leaned closer, took a card from my grasp, and allowed his fingers to linger just a moment longer. His touch ignited a spark within me. I withdrew. He did not. Our gazes intertwined, firm, unwavering, and then, in a gentle whisper, "Instruct me to cease." I did not. I'm uncertain of the reason. Perhaps I do. Perhaps I had been anticipating that moment for far longer than I was willing to acknowledge. His lips grazed mine, as if seeking an answer, and I responded. The kiss radiated warmth. In pursuit, then further into the depths. desperate for attention, a dam shattering under the weight of prolonged stillness. His hands settled on my waist, his hair mine. We dissolved into the countertop, into the darkness, into a reflection of ourselves that defied existence. Yet it did. Silence enveloped the moment, leaving an absence of expression. There are no explanations needed, merely breath, skin, and fire. In that moment, we transcended the roles of mother and stepson. We were merely two souls who had endured the weight of solitude for far too long. And when it had come to its conclusion, as I reclined in the soft embrace of an unnamed afterglow, I felt no guilt, not at this moment. A wave of recognition washed over me, seeking, vibrant, and that was sufficient to destroy it all. As dawn broke, silence enveloped the air, and no words were exchanged. A pot of coffee was brewed. As we crossed paths in the hallway, a fleeting moment of recognition lingered in the air. We occupied our usual positions at opposite ends of the kitchen table. Yet all had transformed. The atmosphere was palpable, dense, weighty, charged with energy. As our hands grazed the surface of the butter dish, a sudden jolt of surprise coursed through me. He did not. Zach regarded me with an expression that suggested all was well. The previous night felt like a whispered secret between them, a new beginning. Yet, to me, it seemed as though everything I had tightly bound for years was gradually coming undone. During dinner, I found myself ensnared by his gaze, remaining in the moment, unveiled. Frank lingered just inches away, blissfully oblivious to the unfolding scene. It sent a shiver through my gut. As the night deepened and the world around me succumbed to slumber, I found myself wide awake, rhythm, cleaning dishes that were already clean, struggling to find my breath. At precisely 2:37 a.m., the glow of my phone pierced the darkness. Unfamiliar digit. It would be wise for you to share this with him before I have the chance to do so. A photo was attached, coarse and textured, gloomy, yet it is undeniable. Zach's hand rested gently on my back, my head inclined, my lips slightly ajar. A fleeting instant we believed was ours alone, immortalized through a pane of glass. My chest constricted. There was a whisper of knowledge in the air. The following day, I revealed the message to Zach. He perused the words, offered a casual shrug, and remarked, "Let them. I have no concern for that." I gazed at him, filled with dread. This has the potential to destroy it all. He wore a smug smile. Perhaps all things must face destruction. In that moment, clarity struck me. Whatever I had believed we had diverged completely. Once more, the message arrived under the cloak of night. A subsequent photograph, then yet another. At long last, a name emerges, Wilkins. I gazed through the window, surveying the expanse of the lawn beyond. Her lights glowed brightly. She nestled into her armchair, cradling a warm cup of tea as she savored each delicate sip. Observing, she always had been. I had every intention of sharing it with him. I practiced it for days, imagining the moment I'd sit Frank down, beginning with "I made a mistake," meeting his gaze, ready to face whatever tempest followed. Yet, as I stepped into his study, my heart racing and throat parched, he met me with an expression devoid of surprise. He remained engrossed in his laptop, not even glancing up. "I understand," he replied. I remained utterly still. "In what manner?" "Wilkins," he responded. "Last week, she shared the photos with me." My knees almost gave way. He tapped on his screen and angled it in my direction. There we stood, Zach and I, captured through a window, softened by the distance yet unmistakable. "I didn't want to hear it from you," Frank continued, his voice steady and measured, reminiscent of a physician delivering unwelcome tidings. "All I sought was the proof." Breath eluded me. "I apologize," I whispered, the words scarcely escaping my lips. He gave a single nod.
"Iarbo no anje, Linda."
I have reached my limit. 1 week later, I found myself confronted with legal documents. There shall be no disputes. Silence reigns, merely a serene, deliberate conclusion. And then there was Zach. Oh, Zach. In a space that teetered on the edge of desperation and arrogance, he chose to share one of our messages with the world. A profound statement, a record of the moment. A narrative unfolds. Perhaps he perceived it as a gesture of romance. Proclamation, evidence that he transcended mere error. Yet it proliferated.
Capturad moments.
Hedged, neighborhood chatter columns. It transformed from hushed murmurs to an uncontrollable blaze in mere hours. I transformed into a narrative of warning. He transformed into a headline. And what of Frank? He chose not to confront me again. He was under no obligation to do so. He allowed the silence to complete its task. The silence enveloped the house long before it was devoid of life. Frank was the first to leave. Abandoned were only the documents, a chilling signature, and the lingering aroma of his cologne clinging to the curtains. I lingered for a few additional weeks, just long enough for the walls to cease their acknowledgement of my presence. The friendly gestures of neighbors have faded into silence. The calls from friends have ceased. The world gently shut its doors, leaving no sound of a slam behind. And what of Zach? He disappeared without a trace. There he stood one day shirtless, a smile playing on his lips, utterly infuriating. In the blink of an eye, he vanished. Whispers circulated that Frank had dispatched him to reside with a relative in the Western Expanse, in a place where the chill lingers in the air. Stillness, in a realm where whispers of scandal failed to take root. I chose not to pursue. No call was made. Did not pursue. All words had faded into silence. We had already revealed too much. With our gestures, our whispers, our quietude. I gathered my belongings into a bag. Abandoned were the house, the garden, the existence I had borrowed yet never genuinely possessed. I relocated to an obscure little town, one that seemed to exist beyond the reach of common knowledge. Secured a quaint apartment nestled above a charming bookstore. Embarked on a new beginning, not fueled by hope, but embraced in quietude. I no longer adorned my face with makeup, stood resolute against the murmurs. I failed to articulate my thoughts clearly. The scandal lingered in the air for some time, in the digital realm, within the bold letters of headlines, and reflected in the gaze of unfamiliar faces. Yet, as time passed, the clamor gradually diminished. Initially, shame resonates with a piercing volume. Then it simply transforms into a gentle hum. The complete tale has remained untold to anyone, not even the therapist whose office was infused with the scent of lavender and an air of sympathy. What I expressed was, I have made a decision, and I endured it. Indeed, I did. Nearly a year had passed. A year passed in hushed moments of dusting shelves and stirring coffee, exchanging polite nods with strangers who never ventured to inquire. I had come to embrace the quietude of existence, to inhabit a life so contained that it makes no sound. On a Sunday evening, as the bookstore below began to close its doors, I caught a sound that drew my attention. A gentle rap at the door. Gentle, calculated. Surprise was not on my agenda. I seldom engaged in such activities. The door creaked open before me, and there he stood, Zach, more mature, more slender, bathed in a warmth that felt foreign to this region. His hair had grown longer, and there was a faint scar above his brow that I didn't recognize. Silence enveloped him. He simply stood there, inhaling deeply, as if the ascent up the stairs had drained every ounce of his energy. I remained silent as well. My hands quivered against the doorframe, our gazes intertwined. For the first time in a year, I recalled the sensation of being gazed upon by someone who had once made me feel like the sole inhabitant of the universe. Yet, on this occasion, the gaze lacked any trace of desire, contained an additional essence. Melancholy, perhaps a sense of shame, perhaps there is simply nothing. We lingered in a silence so delicate, it felt as though a single word could shatter it. I moved to the side, a simple yet profound gesture. He remained still, merely blinked. I'm not here to linger, he finally declared. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't uttered a word in days. I inclined my head in agreement, yet I refrained from inquiring about the reason for his arrival. There are matters that require no inquiry. Certain spirits yearn for one final glimpse of the living. He gazed beyond me, into the depths of the apartment, beside the half-open suitcase by the window, upon the vacant teacup resting on the table. In that moment, a smile crept across his face, the sort that remains forever unseen. I merely wish to ascertain your existence, he remarked, and then he departed. I no longer hold the title of anyone's wife, not a stepmother to anyone, not a source of embarrassment for anyone, or perhaps a sense of pride, or perhaps an error. Now I am simply Linda, a woman rising before the dawn breaks. She brews her own coffee and nourishes a handful of weary plants resting on a tranquil windowsill. On most days, I find solace in solitude. I arrange books on the shelves. I offer a courteous smile. I leave the window slightly ajar, just enough to invite the world inside, yet not so much that it overwhelms me. The past remains unexamined by all, and I have ceased to extend it. Occasionally, the dreams return, gentle, glimmering. In those moments, he finds himself 17 once more, or perhaps 22, or precisely the age he was when I last encountered him on that staircase. The gaze remains constant. They consistently appear unchanged. Once again, I awaken to the familiar ache. No regrets, not yearning, simply reminiscing about the sensation of being desired, despite the price it exacted. I have moved beyond the notion of punishment, or salvation, or tidy conclusions. Certain decisions linger in your mind, shaping your journey, not with great volume, not with aggression, merely below the facade, glowing with an intense, quiet fire, like embers that refuse to extinguish. Some flames, once ignited, refuse to be extinguished. They simply continue to smolder. If this tale lingered in your thoughts, if this stirred your thoughts or evoked a profound emotion within you, I kindly invite you to take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. One can never truly anticipate who else may find solace in those words. At times, the most challenging narratives are those that illuminate our own understanding the deepest.